Everyone, please rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, everyone. Madam Clerk.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Ricker would like to join us by phone. Could I get a motion from Mr. Rosenbaum, a second from Ms. Daly? All those in favor say aye.
Ms. Duncan? It's not working? I was going to say, check them all before the meeting. Betty? And Kate is absent. 17 present.
Thank you.
Next would be an approval of the minutes. Approval of the September 8th, 2022 County Board meeting minutes.
Mr. Watkins on the first and the second. Again, Ms. Daly. Any additions or corrections to the minutes as they've been submitted? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker?
Aye.
Member Watkins? Push a little bit harder. Okay. How would you like to vote? I'll go ahead and put it in. If you tell me how you'd like to vote, I'll go ahead and put it in. Okay. 17 ayes.
Thank you.
Next is proclamations and presentations.
Mr. Renaud. Would Mr. Nick Rubelid join us? And your entire Academy of Graduates, I see. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody. Okay. Whereas Peoria County government is committed to partnering with other local units of government and the community it serves, and whereas Peoria County has again partnered with the City of Peoria to offer a combined Peoria City County Citizens Leadership Academy, and whereas Citizens Leadership Academy is a community education course that raises awareness of the responsibilities of local government and the services we offer, and whereas Citizens Leadership Academy allows participants an opportunity to experience local government in a unique, hands-on environment through a series of 2-hour sessions, and whereas many elected and appointed officials have given their time to present the sessions to interested and involved citizens, and whereas participants had an in-depth look at local government facilities, including the Sheriff's Office and Jail, Coroner's Office, Animal Shelter, Election Commission, Police Department, Emergency Communication Center, Public Works, City Hall, Courthouse, and Health Department. And whereas the Peoria City County Citizens Leadership Academy participants are deservedly graduating tonight. Now, therefore, I, Andrew A. Rand, Chairman of the County Board, on behalf of the County Board, do hereby recognize and congratulate the Peoria City County Citizens Leadership Academy graduates for their participation in this community program. Dated this 13th day of October, 2022, Andrew A. Rand, Peoria County Board Chairman, and Rachel Parker, Peoria County Clerk. Congratulations, everybody.
Thank you, Rob.
Would you like to introduce them?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick Rubelid. I'm the new communications coordinator here at Peoria County, so you're all my boss. I actually work under Gretchen Pearsall. I'd like to thank you all for helping us put together the Citizens Leadership Academy this year, and for every year prior. The program's actually over a decade old at this point. I found some paperwork in my desk from 2009. That's how I know that. So, but I wanted to thank you all for it. It's been a great program. Both the city and the county participated, as you know. He listed all of the county departments that participated, but I'd really like to say that it was a great in-depth look at how the government functions, how it serves the people of Peoria County, and how it functions within itself as well with other departments. So thank you again for that opportunity, and we're looking forward to doing it next year. I'd like to introduce everybody who was in this year's course, or do you want to introduce yourselves? Should I do it? Or? All right, yeah. From your left to right, it's Jody Noe, Sharon Landis, that's Lori Saunders, Kendall Russell, Camille Coates, Johnny Jordan, Scott Corsott, and Arias Hunwanu. So thank you very much, all of you. We really appreciate it, and like I said, you'll see me around, so thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you very much. Thank you again. Before we move to citizen remarks, I'd like to introduce our county executive, Mr. Sorrell, with an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Typically, obviously, I'd make announcements like all of you at the end of the meeting, but I want to take a quick moment and introduce the board and team members that are in the audience and anyone that's watching the live stream. The county's new and first Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, Mr. Andre Allen. Andre is in the audience tonight. I want to say thank you to the community stakeholders that participated in our hiring process. I am extremely excited to have Andre working with us on diversity, equity, inclusion issues, both in the community and in the organization. Andre's first day is going to be on Monday, and he is going to hit the ground running for sure.
Welcome, Andre. His introduction should have been longer, but I will accept that one. You're quite accomplished. Welcome aboard.
Next,
Yes.
next we'd be at citizens' remarks, and we've only had one turned in.
Okay, so Miss Alms.
Hello, is it working? Okay. My name is Carrie Alms, and I'm a resident of Peoria. I was a graduate of the Citizens Academy myself. It was a great program, and I would recommend it to everybody. And Nick, he recently helped me with a press conference, and he is just really a goodwill ambassador for the county, so you should be really happy to have him. I came to you tonight to talk a little bit about public policy and adhering to that. You're very well aware of what's going on at some level, but anyway. So you know that the auditor has been a kind of a hot topic issue, and the auditor's statutory duties to have been reassigned to other county departments, which the county administrator publicly outlined in 2017 in a briefing to the executive committee. The office of auditor position can only be eliminated by a majority vote on a referendum in a general election. There have been several things that have just not been quite up to par. So the auditor's referendum in March 2018 was put on in a general primary election, which is not a general election, and therefore was ineligible to be placed on that ballot per the Illinois Constitution. The county board members at that time voted in favor of placing an illegal referendum on a ballot seemingly prepared by county administration, likely reviewed by the state's attorney's office, and then submitted to the election commission for voters to decide. That was not an accurate election. So my question is do county members really read their packets all the way through from the from top to bottom? And do county members really know the difference between a general primary election and a general election? We're kind of back in a groundhog situation again. The county administrator asked the election commission executive director, when is the deadline for placing a referendum question on the November 8th ballot? And he replied, Monday, August 22nd. So then the county clerk filed a referendum on August 22nd, and I happened to be the person, the community advocate, who was down at the election commission and inquired and found out that you had filed the wrong referendum. So I let everybody know that, and then a referendum was filed 4 days late after the due date, and the Latin words nunc pro tunc were put on it. Okay, that means now for them. But it wasn't just a clerical error. It was a completely different document and all of that type of thing. It's very, very troubling. And before that, though, what was troubling, there were Open Meeting Act violations because the county administration is supposed to send you all out a packet, and that obviously was done. And there was a packet also sent from the county clerk's office, and there was a link to different referendum language on the county board website of December 1st, 2024. That link has completely disappeared. So any previous versions of the county board agenda that are up there always stay up there, but it's done. And what happened? I don't really know what happened, but by FOIA, some of the stuff that happened was the county administrator had his county staff member change the information that was available on the agenda, okay? And that's really, really troubling because how does the county administrator have the ability and the legal authority to do that? So on the day of the board meeting, the county board member sent an email of high importance to a staff member. The agenda brief does not match the resolution related to the exact ballot language. Please insert this agenda brief into the packet in place of the version that came out of committee. What? Just so you're aware, the iPad versions and the board packet uploaded to the website have been revised. There was no revision marked on the agenda that anything was revised. How is the public supposed to know? You're supposed to be transparent. You're supposed to be clear. You're supposed to be doing the people's business in public. Okay, the staff member went on to say the hard copy of the packets I made for County Board Member A and County Board Member B are both correct versions as well. Okay, so then you're voting on it, and it's really frustrating. A lot of you know I've been involved in the community advocacy sector for 28 years. It's really frustrating because county board members had no idea what I was talking about. They never knew that 2 referendums had been filed, okay? And it's just a really frustrating thing because when you talk to county board members, they get up in public and they say things that just they don't even know what they're talking about. It's really disturbing. And then you talk to county board members and they tell you, well, you know, I can't talk to you about an issue because I never tell my where I stand on an issue and discuss that with my constituents. You're elected to represent us, all of you, okay? Even if it's not your district, you need to show us some respect and you need to follow the rules like everybody else. The Open Meetings Act is a serious thing and it's a way to communicate and get information to us. And when it's abused like that, when you use words like nunc pro tunc, which is a judicial term, to just a simple...
Barry, you've got about 15 seconds.
Yeah, a simple paper trail notation, it makes a mockery of the whole judicial system. It's really very disturbing. Thank you.
And thank you.
Next, we'd be at consent agenda.
Sorry, could I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Dr. Blair and Ms. Relaford. Thank you, Rachel. Any items on the consent y'all need pulled? Good. Okay. All those in favor of the consent agenda as submitted, please please vote.
Member Ricker,
Would you repeat the statement again, please?
it's the consent agenda that they're voting on.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, aye.
All right. How would you like to vote, Mr. Watkins? And aye? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Watkins.
Thank you. 17 ayes.
Mr. Elsasser.
Would it be appropriate for me to ask the question of our state's attorney right now, or should I wait till under miscellaneous regarding the comments that were just made?
I think I'd prefer you to do that under miscellaneous.
Okay,
and
that's fine.
Since there's some pending litigation, I'm not sure
Okay,
how much we really want to say.
that's fine. Thank you.
Next, we are at Ordinances and Resolutions. Item number 1, a resolution from your Executive Committee recommending approval of a proclamation extending the declaration of emergency due to COVID-19 in Peoria County, Illinois.
Mr. Fennell on the motion to approve and Mr. Renault on the second. Any questions? This one, yes, Mr. Elsasser.
I just want to make a comment. At the last meeting, I think it may have been suggested that the ARPA money may have been affected by whether we pass this resolution, and that wouldn't be accurate at all, because the ARPA money was had no preclusions, from anything that we did. And since I've talked to several other of our neighboring counties, and none of them have passed this for a while, but my question is, how long is this going to go on? Because, our president said that the COVID is over with. And so, I'm still doing research. And, I wouldn't be shocked if I would vote in favor of it next month if I find the right answers. But, how long is this going to go on? Most people said that their counties are not doing it because they wanted to send the message to their people that COVID is over with. Not over with, but to move on in life, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Well, I would just comment to you after confirming it with Mr. Sorrells. We're talking about federal disaster money, not ARPA money per se. So the nature of the ongoing disaster is what this statement is supporting.
Oh, okay, but that's different than the ARPA money. Huh?
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote. Maybe juniors will work this time.
Member Ricker,
Aye.
I guess we're just going to take a vote from you all night tonight. All right.
Yay. Thank you, Junior.
13 ayes, 4 nays, with Elsasser, Relford, Rosenbaum, and Windisch voting nay. Item number 2 is a resolution from your County Operations Committee recommending adoption of Peoria County's Employee Health Plan premium increase and subsidy for employees and eligible retirees on the standard PPO $2,000 plan, the qualified high deductible plan, and the IMRF Medicare eligible retiree plan, effective January 1, 2023 through December 31, 2023.
Mr. Renault on the first and the second. Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Nice to see you. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker,
Aye.
Member Watkins? Was that an aye? 17 ayes.
Thank you.
Item number 3 is a resolution from your County Operations Committee recommending approval of the FY 2023 authorized staffing count for administrative departments.
Mr. Renault on the first and a second from Dr. Blair. Thank you. Any discussion? Discussion on the item. All right, seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker,
Aye.
Member Watkins? 17 ayes. Item number 4 is a resolution from your Infrastructure Committee recommending approval of a local agency agreement for participation in the Illinois Department of Transportation's 2023 County Engineers Salary Program.
Motion to approve from Mr. Dillon and a second from Dr. Blair. Mr. Salzer.
This is our annual happening whereby we approve the fact that the state will pay 50% of our county engineer's salary. She will be evaluated on 5 different categories, and there's 99 counties that participated in this, and we are ranked 10th.
Thank you, Mr. Salzer. Any other questions? Appreciate your work on this, Phil. Please vote.
Member Ricker?
Aye.
Member Watkins? Member Elsesser? 17 ayes. Item number 5 is a joint resolution from your Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and your Executive Committee recommending approval of revisions to the County Board's financial policies.
Motion to approve by Mr. Fennel, and a second being Mr. Rosenbaum. These usually are a little peculiar. Scott, you want to make a couple of comments, please?
Happy to, Mr. Chairman. As part of the budget process annually, the finance team and staff review your financial policies and, where appropriate, make recommendations to amend those policies. There are 2 recommended amendments to your financial policies for this year. The first one is in relationship to the fund balance policy, which is revenue policy number 1. And in that one, we are striking the County Risk Management Fund as a fund that would be required to maintain an amount of 8% of its current appropriation in reserves, which means that it will fall back to what all of the other property tax supported funds will be, and that is to have a reserve requirement of 24% of the annual appropriation. The second amendment is a new policy under the accounting policies, and this is specifically related to purchasing. This comes from not a finding in our external audit, but a recommendation from our external auditors. The finance team converses with them throughout the year and even outside the annual auditing process to further improve our financial acumen. This addition is specifically related to prepaid expenses, which is it has a threshold of $5,000 or more for goods or services that would be received in a future accounting period or periods that are beyond the fiscal year. So an example might be where we've got a contract for services that bridges 2 fiscal years. We have an accounting practice and policy now, presuming this gets approved tonight, that can properly account for how we book those expenditures on our balance sheet and our financial statements. Happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate the summary. Any comments or questions for Mr. Sorrell? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker?
Aye.
Member Watkins? 17 ayes. Item number 6. Go to my right screen here. A joint resolution from your Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and your Executive Committee recommending approval of the annual authorization for year-end transfers.
Thank you. Motion to approve from Mr. Elsasser, and a second from Dr. Blair. Discussion? Curiosity seekers, any? All right, seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker
Aye.
and Member Watkins. Members Duncan and Elsasser. 17 ayes.
Thank you.
Item number 7 is a joint resolution from your Finance, Audit, and Legislative Affairs Committee and your Executive Committee recommending approval to abate the tax levy for the principal and interest payments due in FY 2023 for A, the General Obligation Bonds, Series 2020B, and item B is the General Obligation Bonds, Series 2022.
Thank you. Mr. Fennell on the motion to approve, Ms. Daly on the second. Does anybody need any clarification or clarity on this? Seeing none, please vote.
Member Ricker
Aye.
and Member Watkins. 17 ayes. Item number 8 is adoption of the annual tax levy, all funds.
All right, motion to approve from Mr. Fennell and a second. Ms. Williams. Let me ask Mr. Sorrell to update us all, since 3 were not necessarily part of our 5 o'clock meeting. So, Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, you should have at your seats a green packet that has the number 8 at the bottom of the first page. This is a document that was approved by a joint meeting of the Finance and Executive Committee meetings earlier this afternoon. The recommended levy as amended by the committee this afternoon is for a total of $29,121,020 for property taxes payable in calendar year 2023. The rate, which is what this body has historically focused your efforts on, remains flat at 82.41 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. For the fiscal year 23, we are estimating roughly 4% growth in property values, or the equalized assessed value of property across all of Peoria County. That means that our property values, we estimate, will be worth a total of $3.534 billion. That $29.12 million is divided into multiple funds or levies. And just very quickly to walk through them, and you can see it on the table on the second page of that handout. We levy in the general fund, and that amount is $7,053,215, or a rate of 19.96 pennies. The health department fund is $1,431,140. The care and treatment fund is a little over $716,000. The highway fund, $3,533,000 and change. The county bridge fund, $1,766,840. Federal aid matching tax, which is used to match federal transportation dollars in the highway department, is at $883,420. Veterans Assistance Commission is at $812,745. Juvenile detention, $530,050. U of I extension, which is a voter-approved pass-through to the U of I extension, is $118,025. Headington Oaks, which is the nursing home fund, this fund pays the debt service for the bonds and is levied here to do expressly that, and that's at $2,120,205. Risk management is at $4,151,630. IMRF, which is our pension fund, is at $2,823,000 and change. The FICA fund, which covers FICA and Medicare and all of our federal taxes that we pay on our payroll, is at $3,180,310. And this year there is no debt service that is recommended to be levied. Throughout the rest of that document, you will be able to see maybe some specifics on how those dollars will be used within each of those funds. So, Mr. Chairman, the recommendation coming from the committee is to keep the tax rate flat at the 82.41 cents that this body has been focused on for a number of years. I would say dating back to the probably taxes payable in 2017 would have been the last time it was increased, and that was increased based on an advisory referendum that the voters approved.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrell. Discussion? Been a lot of meetings to get to this point, and it's going to be silent, huh? Maybe we did our jobs, maybe not. Okay. Anyone, any discussion? Then I will call the vote. Please vote.
Member Ricker
Aye.
and Member Watkins. 17 ayes. Next item is item number 9, adoption of the Peoria County Annual Budget and Appropriation Ordinance for January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Mr. Fennell on the motion to approve, and anyone? Mr. Salzer on the second. Mr. Sorrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this would be the blue shaded or sheets of paper with the number 9 at the bottom. This was also amended in committee just earlier to reflect the change that was made to the property tax levy to keep property taxes, the tax rate flat for the taxpayers of Peoria County. If the chairman doesn't mind, I've got a very short slide deck to highlight similar to what all of you saw in committee meetings, but maybe for the audience and those watching the live stream, what money we're going to generate this year and what money and how we're going to use those dollars.
I would say with an order of magnitude of 151 million, a little presentation won't hurt.
All right. So whenever we talk about budgets, we talk about sources of funds, which is where the money comes from, and uses of funds, which is where the money goes. The recommended sources of funds or revenues is $147.74 million. It's collected in a variety of sources, including property taxes, other taxes, licenses and permits, intergovernmental revenues, charges for services, fines, interest income on our investments, miscellaneous revenues, other financing sources, and any transfers that we might have between funds. Uses of funds or the expenditures is recommended at $150,926,000 and change. We use those in a variety of means as well, the largest being personnel services, commodities, contractuals, capital, depreciation on our buildings, debt service obligations that we have, and then transfers out. Looking at property taxes, this is reflective of the prior item that you just approved. This is those numbers that I read off. This pie chart actually shows how that looks and works. The pie wedges that are blue and gray in shade are our operating funds. The ones that are red and pink are our debt service. are our pension-related funds. If we had any debt service, they would be a third color. As I talked about, EAV is expected to grow by 4%. Calendar year 23 is also the year of our quadrennial reassessment process, and the supervisor assessments does expect, because it's a rolling 4-year average, that we'll see small and modest EAV or equalized assessed value increases over the next couple of years. Obviously I read through this in the previous slide, but just to kind of break down any changes that we might have in the tax levy that you just approved, the general fund increases by 0.2 of 1 penny. The risk management fund, to cover some anticipated litigation costs, increases by 3.13 cents per $100 of equalized assessed value. As we talked about, the Veterans Assistance Commission increases by 0.8 of 1 penny. That covers personnel costs and 2 new positions. FICA, which again is our federal income tax liabilities based on our payroll, increases by 54/100ths of a penny. That is to recapitalize those reserves that were meeting annual cash flow needs. Just as a reminder, all property tax supported funds, the late in the first quarter, early second quarter of the calendar year is when those cash flows are at their lowest, because it's the longest that we've been since we received any property tax revenue. And FICA has an obligation to meet those cash flow requirements. And then based on the rate of return of investments by IMRF and a smaller workforce, the IMRF levy is actually decreasing by 4.67 pennies. You add all those together, and it actually means that the tax rate remains flat. The consequence of seeing a 4% growth in property values does mean that for our share of the tax bill, the owner of a $150,000 home will expect to pay $16.48 more to the county for the county's share of property taxes next year. This chart just basically shows how those revenues and those expenditures across all funds are divided by oversight from the various committees of the county board. Executive committee, based on all the general revenues of the county that it comes into the general fund, has the largest revenue oversight, but the criminal justice and public safety systems that are under the oversight of the Public Safety and Justice Committee have the largest amount of expenditures. Looking at the general fund, we are recommending $50,594,925 in revenues. Again, in those same revenue categories that we talked about across all funds, and the uses of funds or the expenditures is recommended at $50,877,620. You notice those numbers are not exactly equal. That's because your prior agenda item that you approved lowered the general fund's share of property taxes by 0.8 pennies so that we could maintain that same property tax rate. The difference between these two numbers will be made up by the reserves of the general fund. All right, and then again, same pie charts that shows oversight of the committees. No surprise here, the executive committee has 2/3 of the responsibility of the revenues, and the Public Safety and Justice Committee has oversight of 2/3 of the expenditures. Why we are able to, this one time, use reserves of the general fund to cover that revenue shortfall by decreasing the property taxes is that currently the reserves of the general fund are capable of allowing that. The blue shaded, dark blue shaded area on this chart represents the reserves. You can see that end of the most recent audited financial statements has, which would be FY21, has the reserves, roughly at about $24 million. The projected for end of this year is supposed to go up just a little bit, and then you see it dip a little bit based on 23, what is recommended and as has been amended by the committee tonight. And then we have conservative revenue and expenditures going forward in the model. That's why the curve is a nice consistent slope. The yellow line represents the actual written policy that you've adopted of having reserves of at least 24%. The blue hashed line is the unwritten comfort level of the Finance Committee of having 30% reserves in this fund. And you can see as of today, we're above that, both of those lines. Based on our using historical information and based on the model that we run, we would estimate that absent any intervention by future county boards, that the reserves would dip below that comfort level of 30%. somewhere in FY 31 or 32, and would dip below your actual policy somewhere in late 32 or early 2023. Market change from 2015, 2016, where this model actually only went out to 2028 or so, and the model showed that not only would the reserves dip below policy, but they would be exhausted absent intervention by the county board by that time. So the fiscal stewardship of the board, combined with good economic activity and the revenues that we're receiving, have allowed us to create the financial condition that we're in. I went over these in committee, but just real quickly, these are the workforce changes that are in the recommended budget. There's a net increase of 17.4 full-time equivalents in this budget across multiple departments, from anywhere from county administration, the coroner's office, the highway department, the sheriff's office, the treasurer's office, juvenile detention, public defender, state's attorneys, and Veterans Assistance Commission. Some project and initiative type investments that are in the recommended budget. ARPA, fiscal recovery funds, continued obviously as we appropriate those, or discuss appropriating those, we have continued policy discussions. But those include, in this budget, year 2 of the Health Equity Fund investment on social determinants of public health. That's pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement we have with the city of Peoria. It's under economic development. It's year 3 of our investment in the G-Beta partnership with OSF Healthcare at Distillery Labs. It's also year 3 of our investment in Central Illinois Living Laboratory, of which we're just recently awarded a second planning grant from the Illinois Department of Transportation. And then continued investment in Justine Peterson. In FY23 for the Health and Human Services campus, the pre-construction design work will transition to construction as we get ready to this winter put bid packages out on the street for construction. And then COVID-19, as it relates to the health department, there's still work being done, and then as there may be surges that occur throughout the course of the year, that obviously can impact not only the health department but also the juvenile detention center and the sheriff's office as it relates to the corrections division in the sheriff's office. Just to articulate specifically how we're going to spend the recommended ARPA dollars in FY23. This budget has $1.2 million scheduled to be invested in broadband infrastructure. Specifically, the category under ARPA is broadband, sewer, and water, but all 1.2 is recommended for broadband at this point. There is the response to the public health and negative economic impacts at $14 million. Most of that is recommended for the Health and Human Services campus construction. And then under the category of replacing public sector lost revenue, that $4,005,000 covers economic development initiatives and capital improvements of our other existing facilities. This slide just shows the accounts of where we will expend those dollars should the budget be approved. And then lastly, this just shows the accounting of the amendment that the committee made earlier today that reflects the decrease in the general fund levy and how we're going to account for the lost revenue by using reserves. That's a very high level summary of this year's spending plan, Mr. Chairman. As noted in an email to the board on Tuesday morning, or even maybe it was Monday night, pursuant to your rules, the deadline for board members to submit individual member-initiated amendments was 5 p.m. on Monday. I did not receive any such amendments, so At this point, happy to answer any questions of you and the board.
Thank you, Scott. Members? Mr. Dillon.
Thanks, Scott and team, for getting second year that the chairman has tasked you to get done in October, and great job as always is getting there. You touched on it, and I should have asked it probably back in committee, but can you explain to me, I know they're not actually interrelated, and maybe this would be a Heather question, but if IMRF goes down roughly 1.4 million, not quite 5 pennies, how does FICA go up almost a half a penny and not, you would think that it would be correlated and coincide?
Mr. Dillon, that's a great question. So IMRF went down for two reasons. The first is smaller workforce, and a part of that smaller workforce, every time we hire a new team member, that team member comes in as a Tier 2 IMRF employee. So it takes longer for investment in the pension plan and what the financial obligations are. Second, market performance is the other primary reason. IMRF had good performance in the stock market for their investments for all of our pensions across the entire state, and that allows them then to adjust the rates for every IMRF employer across the state accordingly. FICA, on the other hand, it's a function of recapitalizing our reserves to make sure that we're meeting seasonal cash flow needs. Right now, those reserves do not meet our seasonal cash flow needs in the spring and early summer before we get that first property tax distribution. And so that is seemingly what the disconnect might be, but it's a function of making sure that we've got adequate cash flow in that fund to meet our federal payroll obligations.
Thank you. Mr. Elsesser?
I have a couple questions and then a comment. The first one, did you already hit on the percentage that the county levies actually use up as far as the property taxes? Is it like 11 or 12% or?
Property taxes represent across the entire organization, 29 million out of 147 million is, roughly 19.5–20% of all of our revenues are property taxes. Specifically in the general fund, it's roughly 14% of the general fund revenues.
Okay. But for the average taxpayer, I think I misstated my question. I humbly apologize. Isn't the percentage that they actually pay, on our behalf and on our constituents' behalf about 11 or 12%?
Yes, Mr. Elsesser. So depending on whether where you live, whether you live in a municipality or not, or in which school district you live in, Peoria County ranges from 9 to 11.5 or 12% of the tax bill. The rest of the tax bill comes from the other taxing bodies, largely your school district, but it's also your township, the airport authority, Illinois Central College. If you live in a municipality, that municipality. If you live in a park district, that park district, and so on. Okay.
And the 4% increase in the EAV, is that a 3-year rolling average or a 4?
So it's a multi-year. I believe it's a 4-year rolling average. That 4% is the amount that the supervisor of assessments is estimating for change between taxes paid this year and taxes that we paid next year.
Okay. Because I was kind of shocked that it was that high, because we had the 2 COVID years in there in which property values fell. But I know that the increase has been pretty dramatic this last year. So, it could have been 8 or 10% this last year and a half, and so that would make up for that. And then my one comment was on the graph with regard to the general fund and the reserves. I believe it was in about 10 years you mentioned that we may or may not fall below the line where we have our policies initiated. And I know maybe the comments are not necessarily appropriate for tonight, but down the road in the next few months, I will continue to argue for using a greater percentage of that ARPA money to substitute different expenditures, and I know there's different ways you can do that, so that our general fund doesn't have to be depleted, and put a county board 10 years from now in a situation where they may or may not have to raise property taxes, and so I will continue to argue against spending, $15 to $18 million on a new health campus, because, it could strap us and strain us 8 to 10 years from down the road, and so I hope we can look at that.
Thank you, Mr. Alsasser. I see somebody scratch their nose maybe over here. All right, is that it? Jim, did I see your hand go up?
Well, I don't know whether I'd comment after we vote or before. I just want to thank Scott and Heather and Julie for all the work they did, all the elected officials, all the work that all the individual board members did. I thought it was a very smooth process this year, and again, we're ahead of schedule, and thank you for all the work.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all the committee chairpersons and the members of those committees for getting the job done. Yes, we are a month ahead, which it just feels good to finish early. While there is a $302,000 delta in the general fund balance, I'm willing to support this for the good of the order. It is the first time I can remember not passing a completely balanced business plan, but we have our reasons to do so. So, having said that, if there are no other comments, I will call the question. Please vote.
Member Ricker
Aye.
and Member Watkins. 17 ayes. We are at Miscellaneous and Announcements.
Back to you, Mr. Alsasser. You wanted something under miscellaneous.
Well, for the general public's well-being, and because they're watching this meeting, would it be appropriate for me to ask our legal counsel, and I'm sure the answer would be yes, otherwise it wouldn't be on the ballot, if they feel comfortable and they're supportive of all the information, not the information, but they're supportive of the fact that the auditor's referendum is okay to be on the ballot, and everything's legal on our behalf for county board members and for the state's attorney's office.
Correct. The county board adopted the resolution to put the referendum on the ballot in plenty of time. You met deadlines and everything was satisfactory, and the referendum went on the ballot. The election commission, the election commission was able to process that, so it is, yes, properly on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. I just thought it would be good if for any one of the general public that may or may not be watching, that they can be assured that is the case. So,
Thank you for helping point that out, Brian. Anyone else? Dr. Blair, and then Jennifer Rose Allison.
As many of you know, I'm the chair of the advisory committee to Peoria County on entrepreneurship and small business. I'm excited to announce that next Wednesday, October 19th at 9:30, we'll be launching startabusinessgp.org. And this is going to be a place that any entrepreneur can go and start the process of thinking through the questions you need to think through before starting a business, as well as access advisors and mentors along the way to help you. We're really excited about this. And now that we've passed the budget, we will also have these grants available to Peoria County entrepreneurs who are interested in, who really need just a little bit of money to help them get their business started. So if, I'm very excited. We'll have the press event here in the Horseshoe on October 19th, 9:30.
Thank you. I think we're fortunate, blessed perhaps, to have an expert in entrepreneurialism from the local university. So thank you for leading that effort. Ms. Groves Allison.
I have a question for Scott. In the budget presentation, you brushed over the Justine Peterson funds, and given the great work that they're doing, I was wondering if we could get a report or a presentation on that, maybe annually, just because we haven't heard from them in a while.
Happy to get that scheduled for a future executive committee meeting.
That's a great point. Great point, Jennifer. Mr. Dillon.
Just so the members, if you, I believe a email communication will go out or be in Scott's report, but so completing historical practices as our terms get here to the end. Mr. Rand, myself, Mr. Fennell, and Sharon on our rules. So we usually typically have one last meeting, just go over the rules. It's kind of the temporary rules that we pass on to the new board. So we will be having a rules meeting 4 o'clock on Monday, October 24th. So it's immediately following land use. So I believe we should have that meeting done hopefully in about 15 minutes. So if you would have any suggestions or anything that you've thought of over the years that the rules would need tweaked on, now's the time to make a recommendation to one of us or administration. But these rules are just, again, temporary. A new board, once they get seated, will have to meet for rules and adopt their rules of order also. But this has been historical practice. You meet one last time to pass on the rules. So if there's anything you can think of, let us know.
Thank you, Mr. Dillon. Ms. Duncan, then Ms. Daly.
I'd like to take this time to wish Monica Hendrickson a happy birthday.
Oh, wow. There's a birthday in the house. You got her, Betty. Ms. Daly.
Just to remind all members that you have copies of the proposed ethics ordinances. Please get back to Mr. Sorrell or to me if there's anything in there that you want to discuss or change or alter, so we can move forward in November with this.
Yes, our plan would be to vote that up in November, right? Okay. Others? All right. Seeing none, I will adjourn us. Thank you, everyone.